Charter Township of Oxford Planning Commission regular meeting of Thursday, February 8th, 2018.
Order 22nd.
Excuse me, February 22nd, thank you. I'm looking at the minutes, the last meeting. February 22nd, correct. I'd like to rise and pay our respects to the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to note tonight that we have a quorum here, but we have 3 people absent. Mr. Hunwick is not here. Ms. Rosner Myers is absent, and also Mr. Young is not present. If you'll note that for the record, please. Thank you, Dan. I'm looking for approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular Planning Commission meeting agenda for Thursday, February 22nd, 2018.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion made by Mr. Curtis and supported by Mr. Knoll. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda, we have approval of the minutes of the Planning Commission regular meeting of February 8th, 2018. I'll look for a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular Planning Commission meeting minutes from February 8th, 2018.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Curtis and supported by Mr. Knoll. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's been approved. Next, we have public comments now. So there isn't confusion, because the person did ask earlier. We do not have a public hearing tonight, so obviously we don't have any comments to make towards that. And anything that would not be on the regular agenda we have in front of us, if there's someone from the public who'd like to get up and speak, this would be the time to do that. But not regarding the agenda items we have. We only have one technically tonight, which is the Legacy Center. So is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak this evening? Seeing none, we'll pass on that. We have no public hearing, so we'll pass on that. Unfinished business is none, so we're actually into... Oh, I missed Commissioner comments. I apologize. I thought I was doing pretty good. I keep going fast. Do we have any Commissioner's comments?
No comment.
Mr. Curtis, are you okay?
The only one I wanted to talk about was Tough Mudder is coming again, June 2nd and 3rd. Email went out, and I understand it didn't go out to everybody, but they are looking for sponsors, volunteers, people that want to sell goods and wares at their site or in conjunction with their site. So if you want to be included on that, give me an email address and I can forward you the people that are in charge of the Tough Mudder event. That's all I had.
Mr. Knoll?
No comment.
I have no comments at this time, so I think we are through with Commissioner's comments. Excuse me, we will now go into public hearings if we have none, and unfinished business none. So that'll put us into new business. And tonight for new business, we have an amended final site plan, commonly known as 925 North Pier Road, doing business as Legacy 925 in the C2 General Commercial Zoning District. The applicant here is Mr. Mills tonight, and he's proposed a new 9,000 square foot theater and event center in the interior of the Legacy Center. And the theater and events and request is for a waiver regarding the number of required parking spaces, typically required for the amount that he does not have per the township ordinance. So we're looking for a small waiver of parking spaces this evening with his amended site plan. We would start with the petitioner, Matt, or you?
Yeah, I would invite the petitioner up to make a presentation if he has one.
Yeah.
Christian Mills, 925 Legacy Center. I have a PowerPoint presentation.
Joe.
Yeah, she's just going to switch it.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm learning too.
I wanted to thank the board for their time and consideration tonight. I also wanted to thank everyone in the community for their support, people that are here, and people who have written in and signed our petition. So basically, the applicant is 925 North Lapeer Road. We're requesting a deviation from the numerical parking requirement as permitted by section 8.5. Requesting a parking waiver to reduce the number of parking spaces from the standalone requirement of 810 spaces to the amount currently existing on site, which is 516 spaces. Per section 8.5L, the Planning Commission can permit deviation from the numerical parking requirement whenever it finds such deviations are more likely to provide sufficient number of parking spaces to accommodate the specific characteristics of the use in question. So that's why we're here. Basically, we have a number of analytics. This was provided by Carlisle Workman. We had worked closely with Matt, put this together. This is taken from his analysis. Basically, in a nutshell, the standalone parking analysis, which is based on square footage, has a requirement of 810 spaces. But the variance that we're talking about is the reality of how we use our spot, our parking spaces, the number of businesses that are operational at the same time, and then the density of those businesses really don't relate or compare to the standalone parking required. So this was his analysis based on maximum peak hour parking demand Monday through Wednesday was 590, and peak hour parking demand Thursday and Friday was 542. Maximum peak hour parking demand Saturday was 545 and 489. So you can see that based on a revised study, we're pretty close to the parking demand. And our last approval was for 672, which was a variance over the 516. But we've yet to fill even half of our parking lot, which I'll demonstrate to you in a little bit. This was our parking analysis, and there are some variances which we'll talk about. For example, the go-kart track, under the required parking analysis, the go-kart track is 35,000 square feet or 30,000 square feet, and I think you put 101 spaces for it. But the reality of it is that we have 10 carts on a track at any given time. So even if you had 20, 30 people in line, the most parking spaces that we would use for the go-kart track is maybe 20, 30 spaces. And many of those people who are coming in are actually at Urban Air already, which has a separate parking count, or they're at the laser tag facility already, which has a separate parking count, or they're doing something else in the building. So a lot of times when we're doing these analysis, we don't take into consideration the fact that someone came into the salon and then they went to go-karts or Urban Air, which is one parking spot, but we have to count it 7 or 8 times. So our peak that we estimate is 512 Monday through Thursday. Peak demand Thursday and Friday is 486. Maximum peak hour demand on Saturday is 468. And Sunday is 447. Keep in mind, when we did this analysis, we used our event center as full at 500 people in the event center. So we didn't cut our analysis or take any shortcuts or try to really manipulate this information. We gave it, I think we gave it a true and fair estimate of what we're going to utilize. So our total spots are 516. We feel that almost in every circumstance will be under the maximum required. And when you apply logic to it, just like any other business, when the parking lot's full, people don't come in. So if you can't park at a Myers parking lot because you want to go shopping, you find another place to go shopping. I'm sure there are instances where people create spots or do things of that nature, but the reality is we have 516 spaces, and we've yet to see half that parking lot full, but if it's full, I imagine they'll go somewhere else for dinner or entertainment. Part of our requirement for the variance is to demonstrate a number of things. So we're looking at the demonstration of need by petitioner based on comparable uses at similar locations. So there's lots of examples. We'll just stay right here in Oxford. The Oxford movie theater parking lot, 24th Street parking lot, and Concho Pearl parking lot. So Concho Pearl, what's the occupancy of Concho Pearl?
I don't know the occupancy. The parking would have been based on square footage.
Okay. 24th Street, which we've all recognized, there's 103 spaces. You actually have 24th Street, which I think has 160 is their occupancy. And then next to that, you have the Ox, you have the Diner, you have Sushi, there's Casa Real. You have all those restaurants in one spot at 173 parking spaces. Sometimes it gets tight, but all those businesses have been operating successful for a very long time. But probably one of the most significant comparisons is the Oxford movie theater parking lot. Just the movie theater alone, which is a direct comparison theater to theater, you have 680 approved, your occupancy is 680 people in that theater. So by the requirements that you would use, it's one for every 2 people. So you'd have to have a minimum of 350 parking spaces just for the theater. In that same complex, you've got the Golden Dragon, you've got the Tap, you've got Victoria's, plus you have a number of other businesses sharing about 162 spots. So I've lived here for a long time. When the theater gets out, sometimes it's busy, but it really doesn't cause grief or public harm. And that's 162 parking spaces. So I think what our parking variance, which is 516, we're not asking for a large variance. Proximity to existing parking areas where shared or collective parking agreements are possible. We weren't able to get a finalized agreement, and I'm not sure that we will. But we have been in discussions with the management of Meyer. They're bringing up the corporate ladder to see if we can have some shared parking, which in the event they offered that would be included in our parking analysis. So we've asked them for 150 spots. This was just a paragraph taken out of Carlisle's Wortman's recommendations. This was from the township. So given the inflated standalone parking requirements for several of the largest uses, Urban Air, Great Lakes Energy Zone, and the go-kart facility at 101 spaces, our peak hour analysis, we find the requested numerical parking space deviation to be acceptable. However, the Planning Commission should take into consideration all of the provided parking studies, Appendix A, B, to review Exhibits B and C, which we've all provided in your packets when discussing the requested waiver. Sharp Engineering, of course I can't read it from here, but basically you didn't have any objection to...
In regards to the parking, no.
Okay. Items to be addressed. One of the things that we've been asked to do is, in the event of a large event, is a parking flow. And again, this probably needs to be larger, but you guys have this in front of you, correct? Okay. So for a large event where we expect the parking lot to be near capacity, we would, in the west side of our parking lot, which we have 91 parking spaces, we would hold that for other businesses and also valet parking. So people could come from the north down 24, pull in, drop people off, and have people valet park the car, which would then go back onto Lapeer Road, come into McDonald's, and park in that red parking lot. So that red parking lot represents 255 spaces. So that parking lot alone would satisfy a full demand in the event center. And of course, we don't expect that all the event parking would be there, but in the event of overflow parking, that's where they would head. I don't know if you have any questions on this, or if you want me to continue and finish my presentation.
I may have one question. Just you're in the middle of quite a few different points of interest here, but I looked at all those diagrams. We have all those in our packets, and we looked at them all from the Planning Commission point of view, but the audience didn't have an opportunity, obviously. Now, when you say red, that blue area that's to the south of that red right there is also that same parking lot location, so it makes kind of like no sense. I mean, with the blue area and the, not all the red, because see, you have two different elevations of parking lot there. It doesn't show it on the plan that way, but you have to go down into that lower southwestern portion of that lot. You have just over 200 parking spaces there, including the blue. I counted every one of them this week.
There's 200, according to the plan, there's 250.
But you're counting the ones on the upper level a little bit too. There's like a, you have
Whatever I
a
have highlighted.
steel set of steps there that are worthless right now. They're gonna have to be, something will have to be done. We'll talk about that later. But I counted every one of them. I drove in there and counted every one of them. So, and I don't have a problem. I mean, your numbers are all, they correlate well together if you, the way you're adding them up.
That's correct.
But, so I just want the people to know that those elevations of parking lot are not on the same elevation with each other. They fluctuate from one level being lower than the other level. And that's the difficulty of getting from that lowest level up to that level to get you into the walking surface to get into the building, and we'll talk about that later.
Access to from the lower to the
Yes.
upper, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on the flow or?
I think people are going to flow the way they want to. They don't follow arrows well, and you can't put arrows on the pavement because that doesn't work in the wintertime anyway.
Well, for a large event, what we were discussing, if we were valet parking, we would have people guided. It's kind of like if you've been to Kensington Church, and if you're for a large event, so we would have people managing the flow, and we would start parking from left to right.
I've not seen that happen yet.
We haven't had that happen yet. So we were asked in the event of, a full capacity event with the entire building being full, how we would manage that parking lot.
If you want us to, we can go into the consultant's reports, and a lot of it will duplicate some of the things that you have comments on. And I know you have pictures and everything else in your portfolio that you have.
Would it be easier? I'll have less than 5 minutes, and I'll finish
Sure.
up the presentation, and then
Sure.
we can revisit. Is that okay? Okay. Planning Commission consideration of requested parking space waiver. The Planning Commission should take into consideration all the provided parking studies, which are in the packets. Submit final Oakland County Health Division approval of well and sewer. We paid our tap fee, so we have a copy of the check to the township. The water, what was requested from us was to be able to meet peak demand of water at 108 gallons a minute. That's a letter from Nick, our well guy, that was submitted to the Water Health Department. And so we haven't got a final approval back from them, but that's the step that we're at. And we don't anticipate any issues. We can hold that at, I think, 6 minutes. We made some documentation of our parking lot, so some items to be considered, like clarifying the hours in which a northwestern parking lot will be lit and provide a dimming procedure. Basically, our lights are pushed down and they have kind of shields over the top of them, so from our perspective, they both meet the lighting requirements for the survey that we previously submitted, and also are not shining in our neighbors' eyes. Our south parking lot, so just some additional information for consideration. We've had cameras over the last 3 weekends just to demonstrate that these are the south parking lot that was in red and blue. You know, nobody's parking there. And we could probably do a better job with some of these images, but there's a better shot in the winter. And those are all taken at peak times. You can't really see it, but they're time and date stamped at the top. This is our west parking lot. We have 91 spaces. You know, I haven't seen any more than 20 cars in those spaces. Carlisle Workman, the amended final site plan review. Probably the most important part of this was he was just talking about the go-kart facility is fairly large, it's 29,000 square feet. For a zoning ordinance, a facility this size is required to provide 101 spaces. So when we look at the requirement of 800, 101 of those is dedicated to the go-karts. So, however, per the application, the track can only accommodate 10 riders at a time. So this is just kind of some of the practicality that we're trying to apply to the parking study, meaning that we should have 20 to 30 spaces allocated versus 101. You know, benefits to the community, local businesses. I don't know that I have to reiterate this. Sometimes I feel like I need to, but the Legacy Center has taken an eyesore and really turned it into something unique, probably more unique across the country and the state, and certainly for Oxford. We've put a lot of small businesses up and running in that place. We hire and employ collectively a significant amount of people, and we impact everyone in the community 24/7. So we actually put up a change.org, so it's a petition. We wanted to ask the opinion of people in the Oxford area if they would support a theater and event center. I think we had over 700 and let's say 688. I think we were up closer to 750 by the time we printed this. So there's a lot of people in this community that really support the event center and feel like it'll be, an asset to the community. There are people here in support of the Legacy Center that we've asked to come in if they felt like that was something that, they valued. So we have quite a few people sitting here, if necessary, to speak or to add some comment to that. These are some of the comments. It's a great center to have in the community, fun for kids. We love the Legacy Center. My son takes cooking classes there. It's a great place for community and surrounding communities. I'm a taxpayer in Oxford, and we need successful businesses. Legacy has proven they have a successful business model. The Legacy Center is such a unique and important part of the community, and I feel like it makes Oxford stand out. The addition of the Theater Event Center would really further to bring this, and there's more. I'm not going to read all of these, but we have a letter of support from someone Karen Keller. This is the condos that are directly south of us, north of us, northwest of us. And so we have people who support, and we've been here for 2.5 years. I don't think we have any complaints with noise or anything like that. We have some people who oppose what we're doing, but that happens, right? So that's the end of the presentation, and I want to turn it back over to you and answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. I think now, maybe Matt, we should probably go into your items that you have on there, and then we'll head from there to the rest of the conversation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mills. That was a very comprehensive presentation. You probably covered a lot of what I was going to say, too. Overviewed a lot of the ordinance requirements. But I want to just take a step back for a second and just let you know why this is at the Planning Commission to begin with. Typically, when there's a change of use and it's permitted in that district, there wouldn't have to be planning commission action. It could be done administratively. However, there's a clause in the zoning ordinance which states that a substantial change in use has to require full site plan review at the planning commission level. So that's why we're here today. The applicant is not proposing any exterior modifications with the exception of maybe new signs. However, the interior modification is for a new 9,000 square foot theater and event center. So really the only issue that has to be brought up tonight is the parking issue. As Mr. Mills said, we have standalone parking requirements for all of the different uses in the township, as well as all the different uses within the Legacy Center. I think a good analogy or good comparison that Mr. Mills brought up is downtown Oxford. In downtown Oxford, you have a variety of different uses that are operating at different hours and that are sharing public parking between all of the uses. So there's a balance between when the businesses are open for the public, and there are different peak hour demands that the public parking lot can meet because there are different hours of operation. So in the tables that we provided in our review, we have one based on our analysis, which if we did require standalone parking for all of the different uses in that building, 810 spaces would be required. Now, as we did in the past, we did a peak hour analysis based on the different hours of operation of the uses. And based on that analysis, we found that on Monday through Wednesdays, 590 spaces would be the most required at the maximum peak hour. And that's the most spaces out of any of the weekdays or weekend hours. So, and that 590 spaces was based on our ordinance's standalone requirement. So to begin with, we're going back to square footage of the building, we're going back to gross floor area, which in a lot of cases don't actually meet aren't feasible, and they don't meet what is actually going on and the actual demand that's being requested, they're being shown. So the applicant actually provided another table which shows some other peak hour demands based on what he has seen so far. And the maximum parking demand, again, which took place on Monday through Wednesday, was 512 spaces, 512 and a half, round up to 513. So with the applicant's analysis, there would be enough parking at 516 spaces to accommodate all of the different uses at all the different hours. So I asked the Planning Commission to just look at all of these different analyses we did and determine whether or not a waiver going down to that 516 spaces would be appropriate. The criteria for the waiver are contained in section 8.5L. There are 4 criteria that only one of them really needs to be met in order for you to justify a waiver. The first one is that the anticipated number of employees, customers, residents, or other users of the facility at any one time, take the actual number of employees, customers, and residents into consideration. The second item you would be looking for is a demonstration by the applicant that based on comparable uses, the proposed number of spaces is adequate, which the applicant had provided with some of the downtown Oxford examples. Third item is the proximity of the site to existing parking areas where shared or collective parking is possible. The applicant did state that they may be working with Meyer in the future. That's not part of this application, but if need be, they could enter into some type of agreement with Meyer. The fourth item being availability of non-motorized transit. In this case, in this area of the county, it's not applicable. So really you'd be looking at the first 3 items to make your decision about this waiver. The applicant, we did have some other concerns about valet parking and lighting, as well as the Oakland County Health Department permit. The only item I think is unaddressed is the valet. I don't know if you can provide any other information on valet, if all of those northern parking spaces are going to be dedicated for valet service during events. If there are smaller events, if that will be open for just self-parking. I don't think it's a huge issue just making sure that the public knows whether or not that lot's going to be open, so they don't have to enter onto Lapeer Road and enter back into the complex.
We haven't come up with a definitive number where we pull out the stops. We have parking attendants in every, but I think if we have a sold out event that we know we have 500 people and it's at a key time, like 7 o'clock on a Saturday night, you know, we could probably start to look at valet like over 350 people, you know, as planned or estimated. I think that's reasonable. And still, most people are not coming by themselves, and they're sharing rides with, you know, spouses or friends or things of that nature. So, but that west parking lot, you know, the reason we were looking at keeping some of it open, maybe half, because the pictures you saw, a lot of those were our contractors actually working. So as that kind of tails off, remember I showed you 20 cars in the west parking lot, a lot of those were just our employees, but some of them were CrossFit, you know, if they have a class or something. So we wanted to save room for our tenants, you know, so I'm thinking that maybe 45 of those spots, you know, would be filled and 45 might be left open, something along that nature. But CrossFit's not open at night, so it changes that dynamic. I don't know if I'm answering your question, because I don't, you know, this has been the concern with some of the Legacy Center, you know, we don't know. I haven't done it before. My guesstimate would be, if we were going to be conservative, we'd fill half the lot. At that point, the rest would be valet parking.
And I think a key thing to point out is that there is that access drive that it is MDOT property, but it is internal to the site, meaning that if a customer's event guest tries to go to the valet parking area and it's full and they can't park there, they can get to that southern parking lot without having to enter back onto the pier.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to point out to the Planning Commission. With that really that concludes my comments. I don't know if you want to ask questions of me first, or if you want Jim to present his analysis.
Well, if we have Jim do it, it would be very quickly,
I think that's right.
so we could do that.
But he did.
Well, like we said, we reviewed this final site plan. There are no site improvements per se to this, you know, to the parking lot. One thing that I would bring to your attention is that you're amending a final site plan when previous improvements from the other site plan haven't even been completed yet. So, not that I know that this facility is kind of a moving target, let's say. Things are changing, but there are still some items that are outstanding from last year's project that are still not completed. Mr. Mills indicated that the tap fee for sewer has been paid today. I don't want you guys to think that because the tap fee was paid that the design of this has been approved yet. I mean, they haven't submitted anything to us at this time. But I know obviously with the payment of that, there is certainly the intent that they are going to be connecting to the township sewer and eliminating the septic field that is currently on site. There is no proposal to connect to the township's water system. They have their own well, and they can continue to utilize that. Let's see. And really that's about it. I mean, with regards to this final site plan, we have no objections to it. I just wanted to bring those other items to your attention.
Can I make a comment? Interject. We put 150 bond. We put a $150,000 bond for escrow for finishing up the site plan with the township. So again, we have every intention of, you know, completing. We have some curb work that was contracted last year, but because of the approval process or whatever the challenges we had putting that parking lot together, you know, they ran out of time, you know, to put the curbing. That was on the, you know, basically everything that was required to meet the site plan. So we brought that contract with us. If you want to see a copy of the contract to show you that when we signed it and what was included in that contract, we've given you a bond. And to date, we've completed a lot of the work. The light poles have gone in. We actually today, how many lights we put up? We have 6 lights on the front of our building, so they're working their way around the building to finish that up. And I also have the contract for the electrician to show you that we had hired them to put lights in front of the building in October of last year. So they're just now getting to it. But we have a pretty significant bond to ensure that we complete it. It isn't because we're trying to avoid it, I promise you.
And that is accurate. They did deposit that, and they were paving. Actually, they were out there paving with asphalt on that northerly parking lot on the last day that the asphalt plants were open. So they just kind of ran out of time. So I would agree that it is their intent to complete that work. Just wanted to bring it to your attention was all.
Okay, I guess really, I'd like to ask the planning commission members, if we want to, we can go through some of the other review documents before we start our discussion, if that's helps anybody at this point in time. I think Mr. Schultz wrote a nice letter in regards to his concerns, and I have some of the similar concerns, and this is his letter, dated February 12th. You want to present it, Pete? Sure.
Again, my letter states a lot of things, same things that Mr. Sharp did. That there are items from the previous site plans that still need to be done. It's probably just about every single thing on there, again, is contingent upon spring weather getting here so they actually can get out there and do it. As far as putting the signs in, the bollards in, tightening those things up, and again, they ran out of time last winter. So my only request, my only concern would be that those do get done, which is probably extremely important because of the fire lane signs and everything else like that, before the event center opens for actually occupancy, for as far as somebody, 500 people rolling in there. I want to make sure that the parking lane signs and everything are posted before it takes place.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Chief Schultz. I don't know if we have any other letters at this point in time of interest on this job site. So you want to go into comments now from the planning commission, or anybody that may want to.
You want to do the audience first?
You want to do the audience first? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is there anybody from the audience that would wish to make comments at this time in regards to this? Please, just state your name for the record.
Sure.
I think we know your location.
Marion Keynes, and I reside in the Stony Lake Village condos. And this evening, I just wanted to address a few concerns regarding the event center and some of the things we've discussed about outstanding issues that are still in place that haven't been resolved yet. Again, going back to the original intent of what this facility was supposed to be was a youth activity center, not an adult entertainment center. So the fact that there's going to be a 9,000 square foot event center is a little bit of concern to some residents within the condo complex, which, because we are a very close neighbor to the center itself. But some of the concerns I have would be with a 9,000 square event center, that's going to generate a lot more, I'll call, waste management. And if the restaurant bar grill ever comes to fruition as well. So my concern is there's going to be additional dumpsters that are going to be needed for this facility. And there's really nothing that I've seen on the site plan or discussed as to where these additional dumpsters are going to reside. Right now, there's no partitioning or fencing or screening for any of the dumpsters, and that goes back to a segue of landscaping as well. Landscaping that was on the original site plan for us to screen is not in place. There was a couple of extensions that went forth for the landscaping deadline, in November 10th of 2017 was the deadline, and that has since come and gone. Mr. Mills has made some efforts. There are some evergreen shrubs planted between the screening on the north side of the building and our condo complex. However, that screening was supposed to go all the way up to the MDOT easement, and it does not. And there was supposed to be a little more substantial landscaping than just evergreen trees, if I recall. On the west side of the Legacy Center, which butts up to our backyards, on the Lake Dual side of the complex, there isn't any landscaping done, there isn't any screening done there either. And there were some original plans to have some screening there. So I just want to make note that we're still looking. Obviously, Hopefully spring will be here sooner than later. But when that comes, what assurances do we have perhaps that $150,000 that resources set aside is going to go toward the landscaping? We hear a lot about the lighting and the valet parking now for the event center, but there should be some space set aside for the screening. Right now, there's absolutely no landscape or any type of screening between the west side of the building itself and our backyards. We see and hear everything. We see the lighting on the buildings now. The Legacy Center is really lit up like the proverbial Christmas tree, and the building's reflected in the lake all the time, and so there's absolutely no screening whatsoever existing. So I would really appreciate some consideration and discussion about the landscaping that's going to take place, especially with the event center coming into fruition. My other concern is we already hear a lot of music coming from the energy zone. Because it's an old facility and a lot of it's cinder block, there's not a lot of soundproofing in that particular structure. I haven't seen anything discussed about the ordinance being met for soundproofing, what kind of construction materials are being used, what's going to happen so that we don't hear any of the events themselves that are taking place inside. Because as I said, Lake Jules is a conduit of sound. We hear a lot of things out of the event center currently, and so certainly a 9,000 square foot event center would create more noise for us in consideration. My other concern is the fire suppression system. We've worked closely with the Legacy Center for the fire suppression system to hook up into our Stony Lake Village water line, and that is only for the swimming pool area itself. So I don't know the construction of the event center and if they have their independent fire suppression system or how that will work. But I just want to, confirm that the agreement we have for the Legacy Center is just for fire suppression, just for the swimming pool area. No other part of the Legacy Center is to use or be linked with our agreement in regards to the fire suppression system. So I just want to make sure that that's been addressed in the new site plan. I wish that some of the security images that Mr. Mills showed of parking spaces not being used would also have shown a little bit of the shoreline, because during the winter months we have had folks park in Mr. Mills Legacy Center, that back parking lot, and go down to the lake for ice fishing. And Lake Jules is a private lake. There is no access to the public for any fishing, boating, or any of those activities. There is no signage currently. We did bring that up as a concern in previous meetings. I don't know if that's part of the approval for the site plan process, but if signage can be reviewed to make sure that there will be signage along the shoreline, no lake access, it certainly would behoove Mr. Mills, because he's liable for anybody using his parking lot. And of course, those photographs unfortunately didn't show the people parking in his lot and using the lake for ice fishing and whatever shoreline activities. So we still have a concern about the signage in regards to that. And knowing that there's no security inside or outside presently, I don't know if there will be future plans for security with an event center so that those type of things won't take place in the future, but that still is a concern for us. And I thank you for your time and have a nice evening.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on behalf of, well, wait a minute, I don't want to do a rebuttal yet. Just hold your thoughts in place. We have a letter that needs to be read into the record too, but I wanted to know if there was anybody else from the public side, not maybe associated with the Legacy side, that would want to speak in regards to this or having concerns. Thank you for your concerns. This letter was really addressed to Mr. Young, and I'm acting in his place, so he is unable to attend the meeting. So he says, I am unable to attend the meeting of the Planning Commission on Thursday, 2/22 due to outpatient surgery. If possible, I'd like the following to be read into the meeting record. Les Pratt, resident of the Stony Lake community, would like to express concerns for myself and neighbors, he says. We are very troubled by what we hear may be happening behind the Legacy building, which borders our community and the private lake. And how's that lake pronounced?
Duels.
Duels, thank you.
D-E-W-L-S.
Yes, thank you. Talk of expanding the parking lots, the addition of the outdoor patios, the serving of liquor outside, the possibility of outdoor events are quite concerning, which we don't or have not approved any of those concerns right now. So I'm just bringing it up that those are his concerns. The Legacy Building was presented by its owner at the Planning Commission meeting for rezoning as a kids' activity and exercise center. We all know that is not true now as it moves into an adult entertainment center. Stony Lake condominiums are located in a pleasant, quiet area with wildlife, open areas, and nature. We are neighbors who deserve some respect and consideration for our homes. Already, the Legacy Building has affected our community in a negative fashion. This is what he states. Number one, with a dramatic increase in traffic using our street as a cut-through to get to the Legacy. And number two, with the non-residents using the current Legacy parking lot to illegally gain access to the private lake duals, which much of our community sits on with boats and ice shanties. Adding more parking, serving liquor outside, and outdoor activities will be very harmful to our community in immediate areas. Please consider the fact that our community, our homes, are only a few hundred feet away and within view and an earshot of the Legacy. Please note that we are not just condos, but that these are our homes, and we would hope that would be taken into consideration prior to the granting of additional privileges in our own backyards. And he says, thank you, Les Pratt. So that was, he's 160 Stony Lake Drive, so that was read into the record. Now, does the Planning Commission want to give Mr. Mills time to make comment, or this is going to our, Mr. Mills, if you'd like to comment in regards to those concerns?
First of all, I'd like to correct the record here, because there are certain people that come stand up in front of the commission and they're at every single meeting for every single developer or someone who wants to build, and they use terms like "we," making the public feel like the condo association is represented, or terms like "us." Really, the person who just spoke prior to me is representing herself. She is not representing the condo association.
I didn't say I was representing the condo association.
Well, when you say terms like "we" and "us"
I said
and
I.
"our
Wait,
agreement,"
let's just direct the Planning Commission first. She made her comments accordingly, so
okay,
don't put words in her mouth.
she did.
Right.
Yes. So, number one, as it relates to dumpsters, we do have dumpsters on the site plan, and they are part of the contract that needs to be finished to pour the pad and put dumpsters in place. Number two, the gentleman who just wrote this letter and also the woman who spoke before us continues to say that we were a kids' activity center. Of course we're a kids' activity center, but from the on-site, when you looked at our plans and our submittals from the very beginning, our conceptual showed bars, nightclubs, weddings, so we're a family center. If you listen to any of my public comment that's in the newspapers, any of my public comment that's on Oxford TV, I've always stated there's something for everyone at the Legacy Center, whether you're 6 months old or whether you're 75 years old. It is built for the community. So yes, we have children's activities. Yes, we have yoga. Yes, we have boxing. Yes, we have counseling, for families. We have spin class for women ages 10 years old to 75. We do yoga. We do everything in the center. So we sponsor autistic adults. We do job training. We work with the Lego Robotics League. And yes, we're going to have bowling, and we have go-karts, which are for all ages. So I've never presented that this is a kids-only center. I've always presented this as the Legacy Center for community. So I just want to set that record straight. Number two, the condos behind us also see McDonald's. They've also see the lights in our parking lot that have been there for 25 years. Some of those lights in the back of that building haven't worked for a little while, but there's always been lighting in that property and light poles going all the way down to the water. Number two, Boulder Point, which is in the same proximity as the Legacy Center, has a banquet hall. They have outdoor seating, decking, golf outings, people who drink, people who have parties. They have weddings all night long. Boulder Point has been there for quite some time. Nobody's rolled off of the Boulder Point and jumped in the lake. I'm sure people go from the golf course. I'm sure people access our lake from Stony Creek. By the way, I think we're the only ones who have access or the rights to access to the lake besides the golf course. So there's an easement on the condo association side. So if we choose to let people in that lake, or if I want to fish on that lake, we do have access to it. Yes, we do. I own a portion of that shoreline. So, that's my responsibility. I don't have intention there, but my point is that that lake is a lake that I also own, paid for, and pay taxes for. Our fire suppression system, that's misinformation. Our fire suppression system is throughout the building. The connection supports the entire building, and God knows we have the best fire suppression and safety system that the fire department and I can work together with. I think that's a fair statement. So it's probably one of the safest buildings in our community. Also, on the other side of the condo association, let's be practical here. You have Stony Lake. You have a public beach access where people come from all over the community to swim and make noise and drink beer, and they splash. There's no beer. I know, I've been to some graduation parties there. I promise you there was beer. Actually, one of them was here.
No beer allowed in Township.
So, my point is they have areas outdoors that they rent for celebration or for picnics or for, I don't know that they camp overnight, but, there's certainly boat access there. People are fishing. They're doing whatever they do on Stony Creek. And their condos are developed on both sides of that lake. So none of that is taking away from the condos, and we've always been respectful with our neighbors, always. If we weren't, there'd be more than 2 people here at this meeting from the condo association. As far as the cut through, that's brought through every time for every single meeting, whether it's the new Leo's Coney, whether it's someone else trying to invest and build in the community. I can't control where people drive, but my contention is most of our customers come off Lapeer Road and they loop around and they come into our parking lot. Because we have customers from everywhere. They're coming from Rochester, they're coming from Clarkston, they're coming from Lapeer, they're coming from, Lake Orion, they're coming from Oakland. So most of them are using the traditional ways. You may have some neighbors that are used to cutting through that facility, but I promise you, it is not driven by the Legacy Center. There might be a few odd people driving through that community, but we don't drive traffic. If we have an event, people aren't going to come up Lapeer Road, drive through their community, and then, come back. So, anyway, I just wanted to set the record straight. Thank you.
All right, now I think we should probably get into the planning commission members. Jack, you want to start? You look like you're ready.
Yeah, I've got about 7 or 8 items I'd like to talk about. My favorite one is cut through. I don't like that at all. Any street in this township is not owned by the township. If it's owned by private individuals, it's a private road. It's not a public road. It's a public road. But let me start. Number 1, parking spaces by ordinance are required in the Oxford Township by square foot, and using a 20% reduction from the gross, you can come up with a parking number, if you will. The applicant has a large square foot of use, i.e. the go-kart track, and extensive hallways. Everybody's got 20% of the building as hallways, what I look at. It adversely affects this count. Number 2, in a retail entertainment environment, if parking isn't available, most generally the people move on. I don't believe the applicant wants to intentionally create an environment where people don't want to come in, and to these entrepreneurs that have started businesses and keep them out by lack of parking. And truly, I believe the parking studies to be found and factual. Number 3, I look at venues where Ford Field, Comerica, LCA, people park up to a half a mile away in some of the worst areas in the world. I think the logistics of illegal parking is almost non-existent around the Legacy Center. I don't believe there's a threat to neighboring lots or neighboring neighborhoods for that use. I don't think they're going to be parking in Stony Lake and walking a half a mile up to the Legacy Center. Number 4, local businesses are excited that the Legacy Center's it has improved their business. And I'll give you one example, which is right next door. McDonald's drive-through is so overwhelming now, it's almost beyond our ordinance for stacking lanes, if you will. You can pull in there sometimes and can't get in and out of McDonald's because so many people are going in there. And that's not a bad thing. And this is the applicants, but I'm looking off in the future as I look at all applicants as bringing something to our community. But since the applicant will hook up to the sewer, as indicated by both the Oakland County Health Department and his responsibility in paying the sewer tap fees and hiring his engineer to drop the field, possibility in the future is that abandoned septic field, if there's a parking problem, would probably become a parking lot. I would think that if I needed parking spaces above and beyond 510, that we would look at creating parking on that abandoned field. Parking agreement with Meyer. It's not approved yet, like the applicant said. It's been talked about, and I know going up that corporate chain is really, it's a hard thing to do. But according to our ordinance, he's within 200 yards. I believe it's 200 yards, right? If you get an agreement with that, you can, if the approval is given by Meyer, we can use that as an off-site parking. And I'm sure, I'm looking at the applicant, they would provide transportation across M24 to mitigate any safety concerns. I know we can't stop everybody from eating Tide Pods, but we got to stop people from, walking across M24. I'm sure the business knows that. I'm in favor of the numerical count proposed at 516, and that's about all I have.
Any other commissioners at this time?
I don't know if John want to go first?
John, you want to go?
Or just go down the road?
Can I borrow your notes, please? I appreciate everybody coming in tonight. I have 2 concerns. I drove the parking lot, and this isn't concerns that are over and above. The different levels of your parking lot are going to become some travel to navigate, to get up and down, and you might want to look at that. And then the north-south drive that is right off of 24. For some reason, I just envision people driving in, stopping, dropping off at those doors, and then driving out and going on their way if it's a parent dropping a child off of some sort. That could be a very congested area. There were some fire signs, there were some parking signs supposed to be put up through there, and I've driven that as I've driven through, and their cars parked here, just all over. I would assume that as business increases and traffic flows increases, that's going to get taken care of through there. You don't want people going up 24 to go from one north to south in that area.
That's great. You want me to respond?
No, I'd like to, I'd like the planning commission members to make their comments first, and then he can take note of what they are, and then he can come up after that back and make comments back to us. If you're through, then I'd like to go to Mr. Spiz.
My turn?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Just for the record, I appreciate the Legacy Center, and I think it's a great business in the district. I guess I do have a little heartburn. My only real heartburn is, hey, Christian, you've been here 3rd, 4th, 5th time you've been in front of us, and I know you've made some commitments to get some stuff that we've given you approval based on those commitments, like the lighting, the parking lot, the stripes, the curb and gutters, and it's just, part of me feels that some of that's not happening quite fast enough. And I know sometimes with contractors, that's just not happening, and now you're in front of us for another variance to do some more stuff. So it's like, I'm somewhat perplexed on, I want you to succeed. I think everybody here and everybody in the room and probably everybody watching on TV wants you to succeed. And we want to help you succeed. It's just, sometimes I think you're going through this and you're doing stuff, and I know you're kind of new to it because you've made that comment a couple times. It's just, it's sometimes a little hard, frustrating from my perspective. I'm sure some of the other planning commissioners' perspective is, we want you to succeed, and then you come in here and ask for these variances, and we're like, we know you, this isn't done, this isn't done, this isn't done, which we've given you approval based on those being done, but now you're back in front of us for a different variance because you're adding something else to the that center, which I think is great. So that's where my heartburn is, and I don't have an issue with the parking variance per se, but I know the young lady brought up a point about the dumpsters also, which I'd like to ask Matt about, because I'm looking at the plan, I think there's only one spot on the plan for a dumpster. And if we're adding this new location, it's completely on the opposite side of where the new theater, restaurant, event center is going to be. I don't know what our ordinance says per se on location. I know it says it has to meet per that ordinance. Is that something we need to look at and address further based on the use I know they're going to put in there?
Yeah, we'll check the ordinance. It's also possible that they can have indoor refuse. So before we said that, there's nothing outdoor showing,
Okay,
we'll get an opportunity to address that. But I'll check the ordinance to see if there's any distance requirements on dumpster location from the use.
Okay, great, appreciate that. And just to clarify, you mentioned you hadn't heard back from the county today. I got an email from them noting relative to the water that you should be receiving your approval today and your permits to go forward on the water side. I didn't know if they'd get that to you yet. That's all I have. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Biz. To me, it's not so much the number of parking spaces from the variance request that's presented in front of us tonight. It's the lack of what we have to make this parking lot and the site work. I drove it. I was back out there again this week. I look at and don't take it wrong, but your one lot is kind of in disrepair. There's some holes in it that are not safe and for people to walk and even drive through, and some things. We look at that 200 plus parking area that's in the southwest portion of the property. The lighting is really not there yet. There was one new light post in that parking lot. If we're going to equate to using those areas properly with the right number of lighting conditions that have to be met for people to walk safely in the evening hours and do all the things, the elevation changes are kind of bothering me to where you have steps which don't work as steps in some places to get up and down. You have to have ramps or things of the nature to move. There's a lot of requirements based on federal guidelines, not just the townships, but so there's things on the plan that really need to be corrected from my point of view before I might feel real comfortable voting in favor of this variance request to prove that we can make this work. I know that a lot of people come 2 in a car, sometimes 3 in a car, so if I had 200 plus parking spaces and 2 people came, there's 400 plus people to go to a venue. If I went to the Palace, I'd have to walk a long ways to get in it. And, I paid pretty good money to park close to Tiger Stadium and everything. So, parking has always been a problem for venues in the past where you go to different events. And Pine Knob, the same thing. That's an outdoor facility. It's all different. This is supposedly going to be indoors, what we're looking at only in front of us tonight. We have a sound building. We have the lady brought up noise. Noise is always something that can be disturbing to people certain hours in the evening. I know the Township Park, for example, closes by 9 o'clock. Nobody can be in there any later than that because we've been told to leave before I've been there. So I had hours of operation as a concern if the venues were going to go like to certain hours at night or if that's going to be addressed somehow. So I was concerned about sound from within. I called it hours of operation. Private property to lake access, honestly, I don't know the rules on that one. He is part of an owner of lakeshore property. He probably has some rights to the use of the land in accordance with what the guideline criteria may be for what everybody has for the use of it. Future plans for security, obviously, as we may become more involved with conditions, I think is going to have some way to manage things throughout the lot and have some people on board for that. Dumpster locations, this plan's very, I have to pull it way up to a different percentile to see everything accordingly on it, but really there are not good dumpster locations. Where they're actually located within the original documents of the site plan, they don't correlate well to your newer proposed venues that you have in that northwest quadrant of the building. So I would like to see some, because people have to get rid of waste, and that's just how it works, and especially in restaurant, bar facilities and stuff like that. So I don't know how you're going to make that work right now without making some kind of changes on the dumpster location. I just want to make sure that when we do this, from our point of view up here, that we have tried to cover the bases to make this all flow and happen. I think we can make it work. I don't see everything maybe in accordance with what I want to see on the plan. So I'm a little reluctant to vote in favor tonight unless I saw maybe some modifications from those elevation changes to get people to flow better, to move throughout the parking lot, and to prove. Now, we do have a lighting plan, which the public doesn't know about, which talks about, which would have to meet the criteria of the township from light intensification, off properties. And we have to maintain that. So there can't be light intrusion based on a certain foot candle past the property lines. Some of the landscaping is probably not in place yet because I saw a lot of the work happening late last fall, with the parking lot construction up on that northwest side and stuff. So I know Mr. Mills has supported a bond to the township because I happen to be in the township, I think, when some of the monies were received by Mr. Dunn. But I just want to make sure that we have on paper, I guess, a paper trail that indicates we're going to get what we need instead of a verbal context. So I almost want you to have the plan modified slightly to show us and prove that we're going to get what we need before I really want to grant approval from my point of view tonight. So you just have to hear it from me. That's my opinion on this. If I were to vote tonight, and it depends on what the motion was, one way or another, I'd really like to see this paper trail taken care of and cleaned up first, and then have us come back and have some of these concerns and answers done on the plan, as an amended plan. That's what I'd like to see. Yes, go ahead.
Can we address the applicant?
Well, I would hope that he would get up and make comment now.
But I would have a specific question for him, really, because I hear what you're saying, and the question comes out from approval. If you do not get approval on this tonight, what does it do? What is it holding you up? Because a lot of the comments were mostly on the parking, right? On just the parking numbers. I know there's some questions about dumpsters from Mr. Berger and myself, and he would like to see some additional changes based on different
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'll let you finish.
Right, so I'm just wondering, from a timing perspective, is this approval driving anything unique? Because I believe, I know the county has been holding you up on certain things based on water and sewage issues and the restaurant portion of it. Sure. And just for the record, and I'm not sure everybody in the public is fully aware, as I mentioned earlier, the water has just been recently approved by the county. The sewer portion is still in process. He's paid his bonds, but he still has plans to do. He still has to tap into it. And he will not be given approval to open any such restaurant until the county approves that, right? Which he has to be tapped in before they do it. The time frame is really up to you.
It should be fairly.
So that's kind of why I'm asking
I
you
to say that word, right?
Today, I mean, obviously we've known this might be coming, but today's the first time we've really had any discussion.
So that's kind of why I'm asking my question. What is really, because I know there's going to be a delay in the opening of that location based on needing approval from the county, having to run that sewage line across that parking lot and tap it near McDonald's.
Yes. So from a business perspective, it's killing us.
I know that because you want to open as quickly as possible.
You know, it's,
What is this plan, today, what is this plan, not being approved, holding you up from doing?
the event center. The problem with not knowing is we have senior all-night parties, we've got weddings, we've got people, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars of business that we can't book because there's a holdup. I want to go back and talk about some of, you know, the comments that you made specifically as far as frustrations. I actually brought, I got a whole folder here. I brought contracts with me. I've got contracts with my electrician. I've got contracts with my landscaper. I've got contracts with my, with Spartan Paving, you know, to do all the improvements that we committed to. These contracts were signed, you know, in time last year with the idea that they're supposed to be completed. The amount of delay, and whether it's on my fault, I'll take, you know, blame for the delay, or, you know, whether it's just trying to get our engineers to do things right, or missing things, or going back and forth.
You missed the engineers, by the way.
Yeah, and I said our engineers, right? So I think Mr. Sharp can attest that, you know, we probably had 90 days of delay based on engineering and, you know, trying to get that west parking lot. And so they were the crew that was, we've got letters from DOT about, you know, the walking path. I've got my letter here from my electrical contractor, which states we bought all the lights. They've been sitting in our facility for 120 days. For the outside, to finish the outside of the building. They were up there today because, you know, we're obviously pushing them to finish their contract, but, you know, it's 6 months past due. We've given, you know, $150,000 bond, and really we don't have, it's not a lot of work for Spartan Paving. They do road work, all kinds of things. You're familiar with them. They work with the township. So all of the things that have been requested, including the garbage location. So one of the things that we, if you go back to the minutes on the site plan approval prior to this, you know, we talked about the location of the garbage to be flexible as long as it met, I think it's in the meeting minutes, as long as it met the township ordinance. And so, because at that time, you know, it's on our site plan, you know, this is a good logical place for it to be, but based on the business needs and logistics of it, maybe we want to put it in a different location. By the way, urban air creates a ton of garbage, and we have a pretty good system. We throw it out the door, we put it in moving bins, and, you know, the kids bring it down to the dumpster and load it. Wherever we put garbage, someone's walking somewhere. But we have contracted to have it complete. You know, we can pick out a location, but I would hate for a dumpster location, you know, that we've already approved on prior site plan, and I've committed to, be a holdup of this. So I know that there are a number of things that have not been completed, but the landscape, you know, for example, we put landscape package, we ran trees all the way down, you know, the perimeter between Stony Lake. We have more to do, because when putting in the west parking lot, they took out more trees than they should have. So, you know, there's no sense in having a guy come back 7 times, you know, but we have an approved landscape plan. We have an approved photometrics plan. Our lighting that's in the parking lot now is based on that photometrics plan. We delivered everything we said. Now, that said, if there is some lighting that's inadequate, you know, we've always come back and fixed things. Maybe not in the time that I want to. Believe me, I don't want to be talking about parking lots and curbing. I want to run a business, you know, and I know that if I don't put my curbing in, I don't get approval for the next thing. So I'm not trying to escape this in any way, shape, or form. If you'd like to see the contracts, I brought them here with me tonight, because I know that that was a concern. From the beginning, things have changed and developed, but I think we can all admit we built one hell of a center. You know, that building is first class. Our tenants are first class, the construction, how we manage it. And so I didn't put, the kind of money I put into this building to not have some landscape trees or to upset a board and put a dumpster in the wrong location. I think that would be really short-sighted on my part. So respectfully, Mr. Berger, I would ask for your approval tonight. Sitting down and going through the dumpster location and looking at a walkway. Those parking lots are already approved. We're talking about the spaces. So now we're going back and saying, well, I want to remove that approval or adjust it, which I'm fine. I don't want people to be unsafe. We'll have conversations, we may disagree on things, but ultimately, when it comes to public safety, we've done right by the public. Maybe the timing isn't the way I would want it to happen, but we want to be safe. As far as the condition of the lot, yes, we just got done with the winter. Just like driving down Lapeer Road. I just got a call from two of my friends who need to borrow a car. There's potholes. There are potholes in our back parking lot. My guys who are plowing there have dug up some of the old, that needs to be addressed. I'm not going to leave a pothole in my parking lot where someone's going to get hurt. Not all of that parking lot needs to be redone. Some of it needs to be resurfaced. Some of it needs to be repaired. And we're certainly going to make that happen. And we've already taken great steps in that parking lot. We've cleaned it up significantly, taken all the weeds, we've removed any of the excess debris in that parking lot, we've striped it. So you're 100% right. I went down there, I just talked to my guy who does all the snow plowing. I'm like, what the heck did you do in this particular area? And sometimes we got big, piggyback trailers that loop around. And they cause issue. They cause issue in our new parking lot. So we need to maintain that, and we'll continue to maintain that. This isn't something where we're just going to open up and, have people come in and get hurt on the way into the Legacy Center. Again, that doesn't make business sense, and certainly doesn't make sense, with the township. The business that we have, we had budgeted to open this business in October. So you can imagine, holding it, and I'm not pointing blame on anybody. These are things that, maybe my inexperience or delays in manufacturing or shipping or delivery or, changes in plan, they brought us to significant delays in this business, and we need to open, not just for Christian Mills Legacy 925, but for the businesses that are in the center. So respectfully, I ask for an approval tonight, and you can put any conditions that you need on that approval. So, thank you.
Go ahead, Jay.
I'm going to watch Jennifer and Christian's face when I say this, but I don't think there's anybody at this board that's as adamant about dumpsters as I am. I went and looked and saw the dumpsters, and currently they don't have a dumpster enclosure, but it's on the plan, and before occupancy be given at all of it, the dumpster, or final zoning approval, the dumpsters will have to be in there. But then I started thinking to myself, boy, these kids are walking out there in the snow and this and that. And then I looked at larger buildings, like the high school has one dumpster location. While that is the longest running high school in the United States, it doesn't equate to the same amount of refuse, but they still have to bring it from one end to the other, one location. Crittenden Hospital, one location. Kmart, one location. Everybody's got one location. I get it. The dumpster enclosures aren't done yet. They should not get final approval of occupancy until all of these things are completed and the bond be released. So I looked at the length of that building. It's about half the size of the high school, and I said, okay, they walk all that garbage from one end to the other, and then they have to take it outside. Okay, so I tried to do all that. But the most important thing is we have two issues here that we have to make motions on. One is the numerical parking count waiver, and two is final site plan approval. So bearing in mind that when a motion is made, the first motion won't include all all of the compliances with the zoning letter, the Oakland County Health, the Township planner, the fire chief, and those kind of things. The first one we have to make is numerical parking count waiver. So all of the issues we've talked about will be addressed in final site plan approval. And before the bond is released and zoning administrator approval is given and building inspection is given, the items that you talked about, John, myself, we've all talked about, will be included in that motion. I just wanted to be clear, we have two motions tonight.
Correct, and I think, so what you're stating is we should probably get through one motion, see where that heads. I mean, my feeling is when you first look at a site plan that's on a paper format or electronic or however you do it, what's not always clear is where there are elevation changes that may take place within a parking area. I just want to feel like people can flow or walk safely from that southwestern portion to anywhere within the building. I don't care if it's urban air or whatever the venue is for the theater center or what. I just don't see the walking conditions met as well with the elevation changes. I guess if that's going to be part of a condition somehow, then I could start to live with it. I know we have some monies in place. I know Matt has to be there to help approve final site plan. The weather caught some people off guard, but I just like to make sure we have everything documented to where when we make final approval, we have something to fall back on. So if you're going to put it in a condition format, I'll listen and see how it goes before until we make final vote.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a quick comment to the Planning Commission before we spend any more time talking about dumpsters? Section 6.20, appropriately titled trash, does not have any requirements about locating dumpsters adjacent to a certain proximity from uses. It only talks about screening, enclosures, as well as maneuverability from the trucks.
For the ordinance.
For the ordinance. On that same note, I want to remind the Planning Commission that this use is by right in the zoning ordinance. The only discretion, the only subjectivity that needs to take place right now is with regard to the parking waiver.
Yeah, I got it.
So the parking waiver, that's a waiver similar to a variance. There is some criteria that needs to be met. The Planning Commission should discuss that. However, any denial for the site plan, for the amended final site plan, needs to have with it facts, findings of facts with specific section numbers which state how the site plan does not meet that section. So some of the things some of the items you're bringing up, while they're good points and they should be addressed from a building department's perspective, if they're not in the zoning ordinance, the Planning Commission does not have the jurisdiction, the capability to deny a site plan because it's not shown. It has to be in the ordinance. So I just wanted to remind the Planning Commission of that before they make a motion.
Well, I move that the Planning Commission grant the requested numerical parking count waiver as permitted by Section 8.5.L based on the finding that the proposed number of parking spaces, 516, meets the anticipated peak hour demand as documented within the reports presented by the applicant and the township planner. End of motion.
I'll support. Now, does that mean, I'll say this, that we vary from the 810 down to 516 and it's stuck at that number?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just clarify, yeah, the purpose of this waiver request is to reduce it from the 810, which is required for the ordinance, down to the number that it currently exists, which is 516. The ordinance does allow flexibility. In the Planning Commission, those 4 items are what the Planning Commission should consider when making a motion to approve a waiver, parking waiver.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Curtis, and it's been supported by Mr. Spiz. Is there any questions from any planning commission members?
Yeah, who's going to take the role? The secretary's going.
We need a roll call vote. Are you going to do that for us, Deanna, tonight? Are there any questions then beyond that point? I don't have any questions, Jack, in regards to the actual planning conditions based on the anticipated number of employees and customers and people that are going to be using the facility. I had other concerns based on the site plan, so if it's only for the requested number of total parking spaces, I'm okay. Would you call the roll, please?
Biz,
Yes.
Curtis,
Yes.
no,
Yes.
Berger,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay, so we do have the variance and
Yeah. Now, the second topic, the final amended site plan approval has conditions, and I'll try and capture them all. I move that the Planning Commission approve the amended final site plan for Legacy 925, parcel number 04-22-101-003, 925 North Lapeer Road, Zone C2, applicant Christian Mills. This approval is based upon the finding that the amended site plan meets the criteria for site plan approval contained in section 12.5 of the zoning ordinance. Further, this approval is conditioned upon the following. Number one, all Oakland County Health Department approval of well capacity, arsenic removal system, and connection to the municipal sewer system is completed. Number two, compliance with the comments contained within the fire chief's report dated February 12, 2018. Number three, any unresolved items contained within the township planner's report dated February 13, 2018. And number four, all unfinished, previously approved final site plan actions will be completed. End of motion.
I second that motion.
we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Curtis and a support by Mr. Knoll. Are there any questions from any planning commission?
Just point of clarification from the motion. The last point, all previous conditions that were granted must be in place, is what you're saying with that last one.
Yes.
Just so there's not a lack of confusion here. Originally, we had one site plan that was approved, and I can't remember all the dates off the top of my head. It was like in November of the year, from a previous year, which was getting ready to expire in 2017 in November. And now, approval of this tonight, does this give them, Matt, what would be the length of time that they have to make these conditions occur?
Well, it's because this is an amended final site plan. This represents the second you approve it, the shot clock basically starts after this meeting.
That's what I thought. So then it gives it another year.
Because, yeah, I mean, it's a little complicated. We have the previous site plan, which was approved back fall of last year.
There was one before that.
And there was one
There was
before
one
that.
before that.
Yeah.
Right.
So, because there are no physical changes proposed with this one, I could argue that anything that was tied to the last one would have to be completed in a timely fashion based on the last site plan approval.
Or they would have to ask for an
But I can't speak at 100% confidence that the time frame is tied to the last one, has to be completely tied to that one, if that makes any sense.
Well, I know Jack would like to speak.
The reason I put that in there was to cover the concerns based on, for example, the safety path. Okay, no one talked about that, but yet it's on the previous plan. I just had to go through, yes, it's on this plan. Secondly, the parking lot, the dumpster enclosure has to be built. So before any occupancy and before any zoning approval is done, I want everything done.
When you say occupancy, what do you mean?
Of the application of this amended site plan, you're asking for the, I gotta talk to the commissioner, he's asking for the theater and entertainment center to open.
So the bar, restaurant, sorry, restaurant or bar?
Could you have him come up to the mic?
Christian, could you come back?
Oh, sorry. I just want to be clear. The completion of all these activities, and I'll give you an example, the DOT and, putting in
I don't want you to go too far. We have a motion on the floor, which means technically planning commission members can discuss the motion, so we have to be careful what kind of discussion we're gonna go into right now. If you wanna back out for a
Here's
minute.
my concern. We opened a 500-seat event center, we're not hooked up to the sewer.
But they won't be able to do that, that's the county rule.
He believes they can.
No.
They can't.
No, but
That's all I meant.
County
for
will not
sewer
grant
and water, of
approval.
course, we can't. But the event center, we're not serving alcohol or food there. So the impact on the sewer, we've got a number of events that are booked at the event center, but we can't open our restaurant and bar until we have, final water and sewer. At the event center, we'd like to hold events
I'm
at the
gonna
event
cut you
center.
off in a minute here, because
Okay, all right.
I need to get clarification from Jack in his motion.
I'm not sure that's true.
So I just wanted to make sure, Jack, when we make this motion, because I listened to the first with the county acceptance, I get all that, the fire chief's concerned, I get all that, the planner's approval process, I get that. Would you elaborate a little bit more on number 4?
Number 4 was the unfinished previous site plan.
Yeah.
What that included was safety path, dumpster enclosure, trees that weren't planted, parking lot that wasn't capped, those items that we discussed. I was trying to pick up the items tonight that you were concerned with,
Yeah.
and the items Michael and we all are concerned with, so that they get done. Now, if the events...
That's a condition of the motion.
Yes.
Okay. And that's what my...
We are allowing, if this motion passes, the final site plan to be approved with a 500-seat event center.
Correct.
But will
Kinda
Oakland
where I'm
County
at.
Health Department allow,
I don't even want to go with that.
Yeah, see?
This is just part of a condition of motion. That's what I'm trying to get clarification. And that's what I wanted to address Matt was on where the timetable's starting from again. So
Mr. Curtis is probably looking for the assurance that the previous work gets done.
Yeah.
The issue may be with the timing, for example, the safety pad,
Yeah,
parking lots.
yeah.
You're not going to be able to tackle those until at least May, because we don't have asphalt available to us.
Correct.
So potentially that could hold up
his own?
some occupancy permits or whatever. I don't know what the timing of all the
I'm just
interior.
trying to make sure I'm not going to be caught in a wrinkle
So I
later.
think-
Well, I don't want you to get into a wrinkle, but what I don't want you to do is have the fear that us granting the event center is going to foresee or forebode anything else from getting done.
Well, Mr. Chairman, here's my concern from a legal standpoint. In our ordinance, there's one section here, 12.3C5, it says, approval, I'm just going to read the full paragraph. Approval of a final site plan authorized issuance of a building permit pursuant to section 16.4 in the case of uses without building permits or structures, issuance of a zoning compliance permit. Approval shall expire and be of no effect after 365 days following approval by the Planning Commission unless a building permit, when required, is applied for and granted within that time period. So there's nothing in there that talks about the legality of requiring previous site plan at that time frame to be complied with. The way I read it is that you're approving now an amended final site plan for even though there are no physical changes, amended final site plan for the whole site. In this package, we have the same things that were included last time: landscaping, photometrics, floor plans, But I don't know if you can legally require a shorter amount of time because you're now approving a new final site
Just
plan.
had to ask the question.
The applicant could, that there are extensions of site plans that are often granted, but I would be cautious about approving a motion that reduces the number of days below the
I
ordinance.
didn't ask for the number of days to be reduced, I just wanted to know.
I'm just advising you.
I didn't want to put the number of days in there,
I got it. Okay, it's clear to me now.
okay?
We do have a $150,000 bond that we want our money back as soon as possible, if that's any indication.
So is that directly for a performance guarantee?
Yes.
All right. I guess I would call a question and we should ask for a roll call vote. Anna, please.
Just a minute, I'm still
Oh, excuse
clear on
me,
that
Mr.
last session.
So should I take that last one out, Jack?
Just responding to Jack's question, I think that because the final site plan, the new one includes everything that was in the last one, they would have to install everything anyway.
Okay.
So it may be an unnecessary.
I will amend my motion and remove item number 4, that all unfinished previous site plan, unfinished business be completed. I'll remove that.
I'll second that.
Amended. All clear?
Well, it's clear what you're doing. I have an additional question. Did we make conditions on the previous approval? We had conditions on there previously when you came in last time.
Right.
I'm just not fully, I don't fully recall what all those conditions were and how are those covered? Does this override what we did? Because I don't know if, I know the plan is the same as you said, but we made conditions for a reason.
Any conditions that were placed last time, I think that are still unresolved, should be placed in this motion as well. So I can pull up, I have the minutes from that
And I
meeting.
would agree with that. I think that's what Mr. Berger and I am looking for, is to have those same conditions we put on the previous,
That's what
that's what you were trying to do.
address.
But I understand the time frame. I'm not looking to change the time
Let's
frame.
take
I
the
want to make
time
sure
to
that
do
they're
that
all
right
clear.
now, Matt, 'cause I don't want to get caught down the road.
It'd only be the conditions, because the plan that's submitted here is dated 6/7/17. So this plan that was submitted as part of this amended site plan, I guarantee it's the exact same one that they submitted back for their
Agreed,
previous
agreed.
approval.
But
we put conditions in place at that time.
So it would only be,
For a reason.
and if there were any additional conditions that were placed on that.
those would still be in effect in this motion, because they were in effect on a previous site plan. This is amended, those would be included, correct?
That's what I'm hoping for clarification on.
All eyes are on me.
Yep.
Just take your time, because I don't want to hurry through it.
I want to find it.
I might have.
You have, we need to,
Yeah, I got it.
And while we're looking that up, the reason for that was solely to make sure that everything was out there.
get to the rest.
It's addressed.
Yeah, I'm with you, I want the same
You
thing.
got a 500-seat building open up, and you got bollards that aren't on fire hydrants. You got those things, I just want to make sure.
I'm totally accurate. I realize what we want to get together. I just wanted to make sure it didn't get longer period of time. Sorry, I'm sorry.
I don't think.
All right, I got it.
You have it? I think Deanna may
I
have.
have it.
Okay. So I have my notes, and the notes say that they have to get ZBA approval, which they did, so that condition would no longer apply.
You want me to read it?
Sure.
Okay. Well, the planning commission granted the request numerical parking count waiver based on the finding that the proposed number of parking spaces, 516, meets the maximum peak demand determined by the township planner. Parking analysis dated June 15, 2017. That motion carried. The planning commission granted the requested greenbelt waivers of sections 7.4B and 7 7.4D, based on the finding that required front and side greenbelt width cannot be accommodated due to the existing conditions on the site, as long as the applicant agrees to extend screening along the northeast edge of the property to the screen northern maneuvering lane from adjacent residential properties all the way to MDOT's road right-of-way. Motion carried. Third, the Planning Commission approved the amended final site plan for Legacy Center, parcel number, address, zone C2. The approval was based upon the finding that the amended site plan met the standards of the Township ordinance and with the following conditions. The applicant shall be required to obtain a dimensional variance from the building's deficient front yard setback, which they received. Any unresolved items contained in the consultant review letters. That's
it?
minimized, yeah. That's what.
So with the amended
Do we need to
motion, you want to read it again?
That's my only question is, because we have the greenbelt variance, do we need to grant that again because they're back in?
No, it's a good question. Procedurally, yes. Just to reaffirm that you still support it, reaffirm the greenbelt waiver. You already approved the parking waiver. Reaffirm the greenbelt waiver. And then the other conditions, ZBA has already been approved, so that doesn't need to take place. The landscaping, you can include that condition as well. Because it had to have been met anyway, just to be safe, I would include that as a condition.
That was part of the greenbelt waiver.
No, the final, and maybe we can have Deanna repeat that landscaping waiver condition.
What's the date of that?
That meeting,
Yes.
June 22nd, 2017.
Yeah, so if that condition was in the waiver, just reread it as it was.
That the required greenbelt waiver per section 7.4B and 7.4D, based on the finding that required front and side greenbelt width cannot be accommodated due to existing conditions on the site, as long as the applicant agrees to extend screening along northeast edge of property to screen northern maneuvering lane from adjacent residential properties, all the way to MDOT's road right-of-way.
So the landscape waiver granted 6/22/17. Previous greenbelt waiver from 7.4 point B, 7.4 point D. What was the third one? That was it. This is two. All right, I will amend my motion to reiterate the previous greenbelt waiver from 7.4B point B, 7.4 point D, and reiterating the landscape waiver granted June 22nd, 2017.
I'll second. Amended.
Okay, there has been an amended condition to the motion, and it has been by Mr. Curtis and supported by Mr. Knoll. Does everybody understand the conditions of the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I think now we would call a roll call vote.
Curtis?
Yes.
Noel?
Yes.
Biz?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes. All right, that concludes the new business this evening. We have communications and committee reports. I don't know if we have any right now.
Yeah.
There is economic development.
Yes, we met at the beginning of the month, and we talked and discussed the DDA director, Glenn Pape, already has an Excel spreadsheet including all of the activities going on in Oxford, and to which we added the Tough Mudder, June 2nd and 3rd, and we agreed that once he had this letter out, we were going to incorporate that, and we were talking about the impact of our newly changed M24 plan, where our design plan for M24 repair has to be shovel-ready by when, Jimmy? June, or December 18th?
December 31st.
December 31st. So we're in fast motion. We're taking off MDOT's role, and now we were asked to be shovel-ready by that date, so that if any monies were allocated, it would move it forward, so we would be ready to capture those funds. That's what we talked about. That's it.
Thanks, Jack. Ordinance Review Committee hasn't really met since we've had our discussion at the last meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled in the first part of March to continue forward with our solar ordinance and also some other conditions on zoning classifications. So that concludes communications and committee reports. Is there anything on behalf of the planner that you'd like to report to us with?
I believe, and Deanna can correct me, that we have a joint meeting with the ZBA and the Township Board coming up. I want to primarily focus on the master plan, but that would be a good opportunity to discuss the Ordinance Review Subcommittee priority list as well. I will have an updated master plan for the next Planning Commission meeting, the first meeting of March.
And that's the meeting of March 22nd, I think you're talking about.
March 22nd for the joint meeting, 6 to 7 o'clock.
But the master plan is still scheduled for the first Planning Commission meeting.
I can put it there.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Sharp, do you have any comments this evening?
Just a couple, planning related, MDOT. Jack touched on it a little bit, but I did receive the base plans for that. So if anybody would like, we have a meeting coming up on March 1st to further discuss it. But I've seen some of the preliminary layouts for what they're going to be doing there, coming through Oxford Township. We are going to get a turn lane all the way from Drainer Road up to the village limits. And then also coming north out of the village, we will be getting a turn lane in front of the McLaren Health and Gateway Drive.
That'll really help out.
So they basically took our considerations, our requests, and they did incorporate that into their plans. One thing that they did not show, we requested safety paths on both sides of M24. They're only showing one on the east side currently. So at the meeting on March 1st, we'll bring it to their attention and say, hey, what about the west side? They've already told me that it doesn't look like there's enough room to get one in there, but they can get one in there.
Safely?
So we'll see what we can do.
Safety with traffic, yeah.
So that was with MDOT. With regards to Savannah Ridge, just keep you guys abreast on that. They did have a pre-construction meeting, so they're looking at breaking ground on that at the end of, it's supposed to be the end of this month, but it might be the beginning of next. So you'll see some activity going on at Savannah Ridge. And recently got some outreach for Manitou Hills. Again, apparently that property has changed hands, so the previous site plan has expired, so they'll be starting from scratch, but that one's going to be coming back to you with a different layout, I would expect. But you'll probably see that in the next couple months.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Mr. Sharp. I guess next is on the agenda is adjournment.
I second the motion.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.